I'd be double chugging a Red Bull and a
All right, quiet, please. Quiet, please. All right. So your homework last night was, I forget how many I gave you, but it was
10.
yeah, but each one had like 3 or
30.
something like that.
30.
So the total number of points was a lot. I'm looking at Jameson, and Jameson put little tiny X's for his points. And remember what I said? I said that points can be any shape. Generally, we use little circles, right? But an X is fine. I would just say get in the habit of putting circles because that's primarily what you're always going to see. Not because you have to. It's just the way we do things. So let's put circles for points. Filled in circles for points. Turns out that unfilled in circles has another meaning than math on a graph that you'll learn in high school. But filled in circles is how we graph points. Although on rare occasions I've seen triangles. I've never seen X's before, but I have seen triangles used as well too. Any questions? Simple, easy, what?
Simple.
Okay, there are 2 main mistakes that students will make, and those mistakes will come in the form of, well, they'll come in the form of zeros and negatives. There's no one here that doesn't understand what a negative is, but you have to think about the number line. On the horizontal number line, that is your first value in an ordered pair. Negative numbers are on the right of the number line, left of the number line, and positive numbers are on the right. On the vertical number line, the positive numbers are above and the negative numbers are below. That's the number 1 mistake. The second biggest mistakes are when there's zeros involved. 0 means you do not move. If the 0 is on the X value, that means you're not moving left or right at all. You're just going to move up and down. If 0 is on the Y value, you're moving left or right, but you're not going to move up and down at all. In other words, if there's a 0 involved, you live somewhere on the X or the Y axis. If it's 0, 0, you live on both. That's the only point that lives on both. And I always do 2 classes on this. Many of you do not need 2 classes, but I always do 2 classes. I'm not lying when I say when you get to high school, and above, every day involves this. That's why a lot of kids always do their homework on graph paper because they always know they're going to be graphing. Higher level math involves graphing. There's always it's called a geometric interpretation of a problem. Turns out maybe you walk into class, you've seen some of the other work that we've done. Every single thing has a shape associated with it. All equations have a shape associated with it. And when you get to higher level math, it's all about graphing those shapes and doing something with the graph, using that to get some answers to a question from the graph or manipulating the graph in some way. If you're ever curious, you can go to my books and just open up geometry or algebra 1 book, a pre-calculus book. Those are the courses I teach. And like every single page has got a graph on it. The nice thing is that graphing is a friendly thing. Like it's like, I don't ever want to do long division with decimals because it's ugly, it's no fun. But graphing is that one place where you all should feel comfortable with. Yeah, I know how to graph. That's no big deal. Turns out it gets very complicated, not the graph, but it gets very complicated of what you do with the graph. But to actually graph is a very like, oh yeah, let me do some graphs. We're doing the practice test for that you take the PSAT, not the CMAS in high school. And when you look at things, it's just nothing but equations and graph on every single question. It's an equation or a graph. And half of the times you're graphing, and half the times they give you a graph and ask you to do something with it. So become comfortable with it. All right, I said 2 days of this. I'm not going to teach you anything new today. It's just a repeat. Any questions on last night's homework? All right, so I will collect that here in a second. So grab your books, open them up. Get your books, open them up.
Which book? You signed.
Yes. Not after the end of the year, no. No, you turn them back in. Why not what?
Because we can't afford more.
No, why not what?
Why can't we?
Because the kids need it for next year.
I hate it.
All right, very briefly, I said I would collect here in a second. Very briefly. Remember, graphing answers the basic question of where is your location. We use graph to show locations. The coordinate plane was invented by a guy named Rene Descartes. This was his invention. He said, take two number lines. To find out where you're at, find out where you're at on both number lines. Where are you left and right versus up and down? Everything is oriented towards the center, which is called the origin. How far are you from 0, 0? Well, it looks like I'm left 9 units and up 7 units. This was his idea of how to always know where you are located at. We will be dealing with the coordinate plane. The definition is a two-dimensional plane. It's a flat surface. Plane means flat surface, formed by the intersection of two number lines, one that goes left and right and one that goes up and down. We call the one that goes left and right the x-axis. We call the one that goes up and down the y-axis. Both number lines have a 0 on it. We align the two zeros and we make the two number lines be right angles to each other. Okay. Horizontal number line. Hey, there's the 0. We call this one the x-axis. On top of that, we throw the y-axis at right angles. We align up the zeros. That's what makes the coordinate plane. If you're doing this by hand, Pierce did every one of his by hand. As long as you're neat, this is how it's done. I would say more high school students do it by hand than on graph paper. Some kids are like, I always want graph paper. It just makes my life a whole lot easier. I agree with that. But you don't have to have graph paper in order to make this work. If you are doing it by hand, I do not want you to fill in and make the little squares that you get on graph paper. It's too time consuming. It's not worth the effort. You can do it without making the little tiny squares. All right, coordinate plane, there's three main parts. There's the x-axis, the y-axis, and the origin. There's more. We'll learn about it next year. Like there's more names involved here. You'll learn that in 8th grade. All right, we graph many things, but in 7th grade, we graph points and lines, and that's where we draw the line, pun intended. All we're gonna do is points and lines. Points are defined as ordered pairs. And it's a numerical way of representing that point. And remember, a point is a location in space. It's not an actual object. It's not a triangle. It's not an X. It's not a circle. We use those shapes to represent a point in space. Ordered pairs have a capital letter. That's the name of the point. Open, close parentheses, two numbers separated by a comma. The first value is called the X value. That's how far you are left or right on the X-axis. And the second number is your Y value, how far you are up and down. Always, always, always when you graph, label first. Force yourself on your points to label it X, Y, so you don't make a silly mistake. When you see the formula that you will use for points next year, you will probably pee your pants. It's so long, and it has so much going on with it. It's called the distance formula. You'll do it next year, and it involves 2 points. And you must label. It's this long of a formula that you mess with. And I will say it, you know, or whoever teaches you math next year will say it. Make sure you label first, because people screw it up all the time because they don't label. They think they know the pattern and they get it wrong. Labeling is what keeps you from making silly mistakes. All points, the first value is X, the second value is Y. It's alphabetical. To graph how it's done, we first label X, Y. We start from the origin. Everything is oriented towards the origin. The first number tells you how far you go left or right. We said before, positive numbers are to the right, negative numbers to the left. So 2 would mean to go to the 2 value. That's to the right 2. The second number tells you how far you go up or down. Positive is up, negative is down. So we go up 5 and we wind up 2 right, 5 up. We wind up at our last location, and that is where point A lives. You label it, and you're done. You did this how many times last night?
1, 2, 3.
Are there any questions on that process? If there are problems, it's when there's a negative involved. Hey, there's a negative involved. Negative just means, well, you need to know which way to go. Negative on the X versus negative on the Y value means 2 completely different things. On the X value, it means go left. On the Y value, it means go down. Okay, it's on the X, so we're going to go left 1 and then up 3 because 3 is positive. Notice I'm also literally, this is where I wind up, I'm also literally going to -1 on the number line, +3 on the y value, and where those two intersect is where the point lives.
Whoa, dude.
If there is an issue, it's when there are negatives involved. I'm skipping ahead to where I have a whole bunch of negatives. The difficult ones are the ones that have negatives and zeros. Negatives and zeros. All of these have negatives. All of these, or two of the three, have zeros involved. The first one says -1, -3. We label X, Y. X means go left or right. Negative means go left. So I go left 1. -3 is how far we go up or down. -3 means go down. We go down 3. That's where I wind up. Negatives will cause problems. Zeros will also cause problems. The second one has a 0. Not in the X value, but in the Y value. The X value says go to the left 2, but then go up and down at all. In other words, you live on the X axis. There's a paradox here. You live on the X axis, guess what the 0 goes to? Why are you doing that? Misbehaving. Don't do it. The paradox here is that where is the 0 if you live on the X axis? Hey, there's the point, and that's point I. Where is the 0 value if you live on the X axis?
The middle.
Where is the 0 if you live on the X axis? Do you see it? Do you see point I? It's on the X axis. Where is the 0? Does anyone see the paradox here? What's the paradox?
The y-axis.
The 0 is on the Y value. If you live on the X axis, the 0 isn't on the X, the 0 is on the Y. That's the paradox. Okay? If you live on the Y axis, guess where the 0 goes?
The x-axis.
It goes not the X axis, but on the X value. And the reason being is because it literally means if you don't go left or right, well, then you stay on the Y axis. If you don't go up or down, you stay on the X axis. So it's a paradox. What you need to remember is zeros will cause problems. More problems are caused with zeros than negative numbers typically. If I want to have students get some things wrong, I throw a 0 on it. More students will get them wrong than if I throw some negatives. Some students will still screw up the negatives, but guaranteed I'll have a large number of kids mess up the zeros. Maybe we should practice zeros more often. We'd have fewer mistakes. All right. The switch is if I give you a picture that has a point and they ask you to write the coordinates. Step number 1 is, well, you got to find the point. Hey, there it is, W. Step number 2 is you figure out from the origin, are you right or are you to the left? So point W is to the right or to the left of the origin?
Right.
To the right. Right means what? Positive or negative?
Positive.
So we simply count, I say tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, until I'm directly above the point. I'm directly above, or if it's up here, below the point, either one. I had to go right 8 units to get directly above or below the point. Then you either count up or down. If you're counting up, that's positive. If you're counting down, it's negative. So we went right 8, that's positive 8, and we went down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's why we went right 8 and we went down 5. Down means negative. It's 8, -5 are the coordinates of point W. Who's lost on that? You said it sounds really simple. Don't be the kid that gets these wrong. These are easy points. One last time. Are we going left or right from the origin? Are we going left or right?
Left.
We're going left. We simply count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Whoops, it's only 7, not 8. We will never count 0. 0 is obviously 0. So don't count where your finger starts or your pencil, however you're counting these things. Count the next line over, next square. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We went left 7, that's -7. And it looks like we're going up 5. So left 7, up 5. There you go. If there's a problem involved, usually if you're asked to write this, kids do fine on the negatives, but zeros still cause problems. Remember, it goes X, Y, not Y, X. X, Y, not Y, X. Let's do point K. You see point K, everybody?
Yeah.
Is it left or right, any value?
Center.
So guess what the X value is? because I didn't move at all. I got to stay right here in order to go down there, right? So the x value, I'm not going left or right at all. So the x value, let me catch up, is 0. Well, clearly we're going down. I'm going down 9 squares or 9 tick marks. Okay. The other mistake I'll see, even though everyone here, nobody wants to admit it, and all of a sudden I'll get the kid, I'm like, show me how to do this. Watch me. This is what they do. They start touching between squares or something like that. Never touch between squares. Always touch on the line itself when you're doing your counting, right? Some kid won't be able to figure out where M is. When I say, okay, show me, they'll go 1, 2, and they won't 3, 2.5, or something like that, because they're not touching the line. They're touching in between the line, right? We need to touch lines. So I know sometimes I say how many squares. For some kids, that makes perfect sense. For other kids, are like, what do you mean squares? And then I'll say touch the tick marks. Tick marks, I find more people understand than squares. A lot of people, I say squares, and they immediately get the concept. All right. I said grab your books, open it up to page, what is it? No, it's page 390. Open up your books to page 390 and look at question number 11. Open up your book to page 390 to question number 11.
Oh my God.
Do you see it?
Yeah.
What's weird about it?
Oh, well, there's another 8 actually.
Read the instructions. Go ahead, Ace, read them.
Oh, all right. Graph the ordered pairs. Join the points in order A, B, C, D, A. Identify the quadrilateral as a square, a rectangle, or a parallelogram, or a trapezoid. Use the most specific name.
So guess what they're asking you to do?
Join the points together. To make a
On
shape.
one graph, guess how many they're asking you to, how many points to graph?
5. All right. Yeah.
It's a
4.
quadrilateral, so guess how many points they're asking you to graph?
4.
So when you do question number 11 through, what is it? 11 through 14?
11 through 18.
What did I give you for homework?
Oh,
I gave you 18.
Yeah.
So on each one of these, you need to do these on separate graphs. Don't do all of these on one, it'll turn into a big hot mess real quick. So question 11, one graph. Question 12, one graph. 13, one graph, that sort of thing.
That's 8 graphs.
Now, it says what you're going to do is you're going to graph 4 points. You're going to get point 1, A, point 2, B, point 3, C, point D is, let's say it's right here. And then what does it say to do?
Join the points together.
It says play connect the dots. Now it says the specific order, which is
A, B, C, D, A.
A, B, C, D, A. And then it further asks, well, what's the shape?
Quadrilateral.
So it gives you the options of,
Quadrilateral, rectangle, square, a parallelogram, or trapezoid.
so let's go over this one quick time. Obviously, you're going to know what a square is. You're going to know what a rectangle is. Those aren't the challenging ones. Parallelogram?
Yep.
Parallelograms look like this. Opposite sides are parallel. Technically, all rectangles and squares are parallelograms. It says the most specific. So if it's a rectangle, you put rectangle. Well, a square is a rectangle. So square is more specific. If it's a square, you got to put square. If it's a rectangle, you got to put rectangle. It looks like this, you're going to put parallelogram. What's my other option? Trapezoid. Remember, trapezoids have 2 parallel sides. Lastly, you just have 4 sides. We're going to call that a.
Failure.
We're going to call that a. We're going to call that a quadrilateral. It's got 4 sides. It's not a rectangle. It's not a square. It's not a trapezoid. It's not a parallelogram. 11 through 18. You get the basic idea? Just be careful. It's got to go A, B, C, D, A when you play connect the dots. Okay? All right. Got nothing else for you. You should be able to do 11 through 18 between now and we got 13 minutes left. You should be able to get this done. Get it done, and then you have no homework for the weekend. What's up? You may go. Sure.
Failure.
You have to draft paper that I can have. Doing this because I go to my walker.
Yes.
Thank you. I would have cried. And fell asleep.
Malachi, go do what you just asked.
What? Did you say $20 for $50?
No, I said $20 for
$20 for what?
$1 million.
When they come back. Malachi comes back, go.
So
Come on, get some paper out, let's get going.
You can buy anything for $5 and have a $15 bill. Sure.
I have $100. Can I grab a paper?
You
Yeah,
are
good
after
job.
Jameson.
Give me a homework, please. It goes.
you know everyone in life spends about $1 million in their life?
Easily $1 million. Easily $1 million.
You spent like
No, they
$1
don't. And they
Most
don't
people
realize
spend
it.
way more than $1 million in their life.
My parents have spent almost over 20
It's easy to spend lots of money. People don't spend $1 million on groceries.
My grandma does.
I have a family of 4 brothers. They eat a lot.
Yeah, but not $1 million.
Hug.
You only live with your parents until you're around 18.
I have like 5 years left.
Jameson, go, come on. Yes.
Oops. Back the wrong way. Almost made a mistake. I wrote the numbers backwards.
All right, any e-learners questions?
Let's go. Got it.